Hello and welcome to today's video about people-pleasing and how to stop people-pleasing. For those of you who don't know me yet, I am Sven Loss and I help people break their unhealthy patterns so they can have healthy relationships and a fulfilled life. And if you don't know me yet, make sure to follow me on Instagram, where I share a lot about patterns, relationship patterns, life patterns, and how to break them. And also make sure to hit the subscribe button below, so that you're always updated when I upload something new. Amazing. So the pattern that we will be looking at today is people pleasing. We'll be looking at the mechanics behind it, of why people pleasing is there, and we'll be looking at how to break out of people pleasing. And if you know anyone who is struggling with this, please make sure to forward them this video so that they can break out of that themselves. Amazing. So I will be walking you through this on a whiteboard that I have here in the background. So for people pleasing, we of course need two people at least. We need one, the people pleaser, and on the right side, the person that is being pleased. And first of all, we want to be looking at what we actually call people pleasing. What are some of the behaviors that we would categorize as people-pleasing? I have a few notes here on this side, by the way, just so I can make sure I cover all the important points that you need from this. Amazing. So some of the behaviors that we would categorize as people-pleasing is saying yes when you actually mean no. Something else is fulfilling expectations, right? That person here on the right has some expectations. Now the people pleaser would want to make sure that they fulfill these expectations. Something else is that the people pleaser would do everything they can to make the other person happy. Doing everything they can to make them happy. Something else that is categorized as people-pleasing is avoiding conflict, not speaking about something that's bothering them, that's annoying them. Also very close to that is not setting boundaries. Right? The other person may be hurting with their behavior or with what they say, but there are no boundaries being set. And what all of these behaviors boil down to is that the person that is people-pleasing is not being themselves, right? You can see that very clear with the very first example. If you say no when you actually mean no, you're not being truthful, you're not being honest, right? You're being a person that means yes, but you actually mean no, right? So you are not being yourself. And I'm always very interested when someone comes to me with a pattern that they are struggling with, or when I do that for myself. I'm always interested in why someone does what they do. Because you could look at this, and this is what a lot of people out there would suggest you, right? You can see, okay, you're struggling with setting boundaries. So right now you are not setting boundaries. So in order to stop people pleasing, how about now you go on and set boundaries, right? Or right now you're avoiding conflict. So from now on, you should just speak up about something, right? Something that bothers you. And I don't know about you, but you may have tried that for yourself and it doesn't work. That's not how you break patterns. That's a lot of willpower. That's a lot of force, which ultimately and eventually will not hold up, and you'll be reverting back to the old behavior, right? In this case, you would go back to not setting boundaries, or in the heat of the moment, when there is something that you could speak up about to not avoid a conflict, you won't speak up about it, because these patterns are deeply ingrained and they serve a purpose. Any pattern, any behavior that you're struggling to let go of serves a purpose for you, and that's why it's hard for you to let go of that. Good, and as I mentioned, what all of this boils down to is that you are not being yourself. Now, why are you not being yourself? And now we get into the realm of trauma. Trauma is just another word for wound, right? Very often there's a big stigma around that trauma is this very big thing. It doesn't have to be something very big. It can be as benign, as easy or as simple as someone laughing at you, which can also create trauma. So you are not being yourself because somewhere in your past, and that is usually childhood, but it doesn't have to be childhood. It can be childhood, it can be your teenage years, it can be adulthood. But somewhere in your past, you will have been hurt. And because of whatever hurt happened then, you started adapting your behavior, right? Let's say sometime in your past, you were yourself. Now you were rejected, or you were left, or you were punished for being yourself in that moment. Let's say you spoke up about something and then the reaction was punishment. Now you were hurt right in the moment when you were being yourself. And you don't want to repeat that pain, so you start adapting your behavior. You start changing your behavior so you're not hurt again. It's actually a very smart move, right? But you always live in reaction to something in your past. So, again, something happens in your past, a pain happens in your past, and now you start to adapt your behavior. And something else that starts in that moment is that you start to see yourself differently. Let's imagine there was something. Let's say you're the person here on the left and this person on the right is a parent. And that parent didn't give you the attention that you wanted or needed. But what you understood very early on is when you do what your parent wants you to do, you get attention. But if you are just you, right, quote unquote, just you didn't get that attention. So something that as a child you may start to develop about yourself, it's not a belief, right? This is what you think or who you think you are. You are not enough. You as a person, you are not enough. And the idea that forms for you is, in order to get the love and attention that I want and need and what I need to do is fulfill expectations, right? So you start to form an idea about yourself that you are not enough. You get hurt, right? In this case, you didn't get the attention and love that you wanted. You got hurt. Now, the idea that forms for you is you are not enough. In order to get the love and attention that I want, I need to fulfill expectations, right? Or let's take another example. It may have been your parent, it may also have been your sibling or someone else. They were not respecting your boundaries. They were walking over your boundaries. You said, hey, sorry, that hurts. And then someone tells you, oh, you're being too sensitive, or you're being too much, or like, why are you so sensitive? Right? So now then you learned, oh, there's something wrong with me, or I'm too sensitive, I'm too much. Now it's the same thing that's happening. You're starting to develop an idea about yourself, and this idea leads to you adapting your behavior. So I'm going to make this a bit more visual for you, right? Again, somewhere in your past, you will have been hurt in some way. In that moment, you are starting to get an idea. You're starting to form an idea about who you are. And because of that, you are starting to adapt your behavior, to change your behavior so that that pain doesn't happen again. We'll just look at a few examples here, right? One of the stories, or one of the ideas that may have formed for you is that you are not enough, or not good enough, not pretty enough, not attractive enough, not smart enough, whatever it may be. Something else that you may develop is that you think you are not lovable just for the way that you are, which is why you need to do more. You need to fulfill the expectations. You need to do everything you can to make the other person happy. Because if you're just you, the other person will leave. Or that there is something wrong with you, right? You're too much. Those are just some of the ideas that can form for you, right? Again, I like to summarize it just so that it gets crystal clear, right? Somewhere in your past, there will have been some sort of pain, a traumatic event, an event that hurt you. And in that moment, you made that mean something about you. When we take that example again of that parent, right? There's a little child that doesn't get the attention that they want. And the only way that they know how to get attention, how to get more attention, is to do something well, to get good grades, to help in the household, right? And when they do that, they get praise, they get attention, right? But they don't get that love and attention just by being themselves. So they start to understand, okay, I need to do something for the attention, for the love that I want. Because just being me is not enough. I am not enough. So now we have these stories that can form, and this is different for everyone, right? Maybe something that I said resonated with you already, and you can find yourself in these stories, but this is ultimately what's driving the whole pattern, what's driving the whole behavior. And it's different for everyone, right? For example, I relate a lot to the story of not feeling enough. Right, but for you, it may be the too much bit, it may be also a little bit different from this. But this is what we ultimately want to get to. So, now, what I want to reiterate is this behavior, this people-pleasing behavior, is a reaction to whatever story you developed about yourself. Right? And imagine you believe about yourself, or you understand about yourself that you are not lovable. Right? The way that you are, you're not lovable. Let's say you like something, but you're really scared to speak up about that, because if you told someone that you like that, they will leave you. So you feel like you on the inside, you are not lovable. So now you would be inclined to say yes when you really want to say no. But you need to say yes because you're scared on the inside that if you are you, you're going to be rejected. So people pleasing, you can actually do that with any pattern, right? People pleasing is a behavioral adaptation, a reaction to whatever story, whatever traumatic event happened to you, and the story you formed in relation to that traumatic event, right? So this behavior is a reaction to whatever story is there. And now you can spend years and years and a lot of effort on trying to change this behavior by practicing, right? When you go to someone else, another coach or another therapist, they tend to tell you, okay, your problem is you're not setting boundaries. So as of now, you need to set boundaries, right? You need to practice that. You need to do it all over again, until it becomes normal for you. This is a flawed view. It doesn't work because, right, in this example, not setting boundaries is a way for you to stay connected to the other person. So if you're in a high stake relationship, high stake meaning a relationship that's very important for you, mostly romantic relationship, you are not going to forgo this very deeply ingrained pattern because you learned that staying connected requires of you to not set a boundary. Right? So in that moment that you can't set a boundary is very normal. It's expected. Right? And now judging yourself or trying to push yourself through that, which requires willpower and frankly a lot of willpower, not enough willpower, or you can't generate enough willpower to do that, right? You will not be able to sustain that because it's still driven by something beneath that. You want to get to whatever is driving this people pleasing or whatever pattern you're dealing with. And yeah, what is ultimately what your task is to get to whatever version of this is driving your people pleasing or your behavior. Because when we look at this, right, this is the root of that behavior adaptation. If this, right, these stories, if they are gone, if there is nothing to continue on the example of not being lovable, if it's not true that you're not lovable, if that story isn't there, then you wouldn't have any reason to believe, okay, it's safer to say yes when you actually mean no, because you have no reason to do so, right? If the real you, if there is no problem with the real you, if the real you is lovable, then you can just be you, right? So that's what we want to get to. We want to get to whatever version of this you have and dissolve that. Because when you dissolve this, people pleasing or whatever pattern is obsolete. You don't need it anymore. There is no reason for you to continue doing that. To take another example, if you understand that the real you, that there isn't anything not good enough about you, then you don't need to fulfill expectations, because you will just think, well, the way that I am is great. The way that I am gets me love and attention. So I don't need to do something on top of that. I don't need to compensate for whatever I think is missing in me. So if you get to this and you dissolve that, this pattern of people pleasing is gone. Because you can just be yourself. There's nothing wrong with the real self, with your real self. So you don't need people pleasing anymore. And then the whole dynamic, the way that you show up in relationships and in life, is going to change. So what you want to get to ultimately is the way that you fundamentally look at yourself. Because that is driving people pleasing. It's also driving any of your other patterns that you're dealing with. And when you dissolve that, the pattern dissolves, right? Because the pattern is a reaction to whatever story you're carrying. When you dissolve the story, the pattern dissolves too. Okay. So that's my invitation for you. You get to whatever is driving your behavior. When you dissolve that, the pattern dissolves. And this is also how I stopped people pleasing. I in my past struggle a lot with this. I was the poster child for people pleasing because ultimately the way that I felt and the way that I saw myself is that I am not enough. So I was constantly compensating for what I thought was lacking in me. And I was, pretending to be the most easygoing person. I never had brought up any conflicts. I never shared any of my edges on dates because I always thought that if I show who I really am, I'm going to be rejected. And when I understood what was driving it for me and let go of it, my people-pleasing tendencies were gone as well. Amazing. So my invitation again, don't address people-pleasing itself. Don't try to change people-pleasing or to stop people-pleasing itself. Go to what's driving it. Understand what's driving your people-pleasing or whatever pattern. And when you dissolve that, the pattern dissolves. Awesome. Please like this video if you got something from this. Comment a breakthrough moment and make sure that you subscribe so that you're staying updated. And thank you very much for tuning in. And I'll see you very soon.